Workflow is the module that allows you to fulfill specific queue-based analysis. This module is going to be centered around a very specific type of use case, and that is queue-based workflows and processes. Everything that you've seen prior to this is essentially agnostic to any given business. The use case, the type of data that we're looking to analyze. As long as we can define our 3 required fields, we're good to go. Workflow, however, is a bit more specific in that we're looking for a queue-based workflow similar to that of a call center. So if you think about a call center, a customer will call in, they're routed to a queue where hopefully their request can be fulfilled. If not, they're sent from queue to queue until eventually their requests are fulfilled and they end their call. It's nice if you can get some metrics around how quickly you can respond to these customers and how much time is spent waiting versus working in those queues. But the one thing we found is that not many of these tremendously diverse call centers have the ability to look across multiple queues. They're essentially traded as stovepipes, where we can't necessarily tell one queue from the next and track that entire customer journey. So if we can load some data that has those events, our timestamp, our event, our call, and our customer identifier, and then we need one extra field. We just need to know what queue the person was working in at that moment in time. So within our workflow, what we do is we would edit it, and there's a couple of questions that we need to answer so we can be presented with a whole heap of insight regarding this queue-based workflow. First and foremost, we need to define the field within our dataset that defines the queue. Okay, so which field contains the specific queue information? In this case, it is unit center. That's telling us what queue we're working in. How do we define that work has started in that queue? Now, are we just going to take the first event that exists in any given queue and define that as the start of work? Or are there specific events where, when this event occurs, that defines when work has begun? Similarly, how do we define that work has finished in any given queue? It may be the last event that's occurred in that specific queue, or it's a specific event which signifies that work is finished in that queue, or if we have a second field, for example, a task end time. In our dataset, we can define that as a specific field. That's our ending time for that work in the queue. Let's take a case where we're going to say the first event that happens to the last event that happens, that's the amount of time that was spent working. Similarly, how do we define wait time? It may be the last event spent in the previous queue or the first event in the queue that we're now focused on. And how do we define exceptions? We want to know when exceptions occur, when a timeline goes back to a previous queue, or maybe when it starts work in the same queue after it had already finished processing in that queue. Since we don't want to repeat work in the same queue, we want to treat that as an exception. Are there specific queues in our dataset where, when it's sent to that queue, it's always considered an exception? There's always associated issues. Such a queue is a routing destination. Items are sent there to be handled as an error. Or are there specific events or values in our data where we should flag those as exceptions? So you define these few questions. Once that's done, you click Show Metrics, and we're presented with a large amount of insight related to the processing of this call center and these work queues. Things like, what's the most common first queue that a person is routed to? How does that correlate and correspond to the last queue where they end their call? You would hope that the top 3 here in the first queue would come close to matching the top 3 in the last queue. The first queue matches the last. That means we're handling people typically within the first queue that they touch. In this case, the top 3 don't at all match the top 3 for the last. And any of these are dynamic, so you can drill in and get an idea of how they break down and are distributed. You can use them for filtering as well. So first queue versus last queue. how many queues are we touching per timeline, per call in this case? Well, it could be between 1 and 8. I'm curious how many of our customers touch more than 4 queues before finishing their request. Well, that's a pretty good number, right? We got 24,000 plus requests that span more than 4 queues. Again, dynamically using this to filter down and get an idea of which queues are most commonly involved. I've also got things like total time spent, whether that's work time versus wait time, broken out by queue, where is the majority of my wait time versus work time being spent, work time per queue, wait time per queue, etc. I won't go through all of these in detail, but they're all pretty interesting. Like queue throughput over time, which queues are processing calls quickly? Queue aging. This is an interesting one. Are people cherry-picking certain requests or calls out of the queue and leaving others to sit behind and age and wait? We can see how things are aging over time, which calls are being left to kind of sit and wait in the queue, and then things around next and previous correlations around where calls come from and where they're being sent to, and then exceptions broken out by those different exceptions that we had defined. Okay, so there are a number of different insights that we can derive automatically just upon really defining our queues, revealing how work is processed within our different work queues.